For it, start your project now. Open to students across all schools in Little Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Grand Cayman. Homeschool students are welcome. Register now, today, tonight, online, rotarysciencefair.ky. The Rotary Central Science Fair, just around the corner, Saturday, April 13th. Rotary Central, creating hope in the world.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama. And now, Barbados. And Digicel, Cayman's bigger, better network. And Doctors Hospital. Peace of mind is important when life happens. Doctors Hospital, always there for you. Call 949-6066.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk Today.
What is on your mind, Cayman? If you are ready to talk, we are ready to listen. Here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we have a fantastic discussion today on part of the Honoring Women's Month and talking about fostering women's inclusion, just a quick reminder that at 1 p.m. we have a live press briefing, and we'll take that live. But between now and then, we invite you to be a part of a riveting, engaging, informative discussion. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Avoid any statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use indecent language or make any statement that is false or misleading. Call 1-800-534-8255, 949-6990, 949-8037, or WhatsApp us on 925-3261.
Email Talk Today at candw.ky. Let your voice be heard.
And now, back to Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, Radio Cayman Talk Today.
Hey, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to the fantastic grandmothers and mothers and all the wonderful women in our society as we fondly recall of blessed memory Miss Georgette and women like her, my own mother included. You know, people like Miss Francine. There's so many. Without name dropping, we can see the examples that they set. And this is only in the Cayman context. So if I don't say it, you know, as respectful and loving as I intend, to this fine, you know, I say finally assembled audience before me, I'm honored to be in your presence. So thank you very much individually for what you do, but collectively for the example and impact that you make. Miss Spencer, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Sterling. I'm doing good, thanks. How are you doing?
Look at my smile. That's a smile that can only come from the heart. No, I'm truly thankful, and for many reasons. And it is because as I look around here, I can meet new people, be reacquainted with others, and I can be purposeful. I can be prayerful. I can always, in my pensiveness, always appreciate that people such as us in a time like this, and there's much to achieve. So I'm honored, truly, truly. And then through you, thanks for reaching out to us so that we can have this time to show our love and admiration.
Thank you for having us. Before we get into it, I just want to formally introduce myself. So my name is Marisha Spencer. I am a parenting practitioner with the Family Resource Center, a agency under the Department of Counseling Services. And we're happy to be here. And this is an especially important month for us because it is Honoring Women's Month. And this year is our 25th anniversary of celebrating Honoring Women's Month in the Cayman Islands. So it's a big thing for us.
Yeah, 25. I mean, my next birthday, I'll be 25.
Me too.
Yeah, we're twinsies. No, 27 is my special age. But no, but thank you. And through you, Miss Spencer, do you want us to go to the table and have Miss Brownwell introduce herself first? How do you want to do it?
Yes,
I'll be directed by you. Are you going to introduce
I will allow
everybody?
these powerful women to introduce themselves.
I'm not going there. She will allow.
At least you didn't say it.
Oh,
So you
no.
are well trained.
See, my sisters would be proud.
Exactly. Thank you, sisters. So I'm Carleen Bramwell. I'm Senior Policy Analyst for Gender Diversity and Equality, and I work with the Gender Affairs Unit of the Cayman Islands government.
Thank you, Ms. Carleen.
Yeah. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Houts. My day job is a partner at KPMG, but I'm very proudly here to represent Gender Equality Cayman, which is a nonprofit organization based in Cayman. I'm a co-chair of that organization currently.
All right.
Fabulous. Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Foreman. Similarly to Catherine, my day job is I'm a HR consultant for Cayman HR. So we're a small HR company that supports kind of medium to small-sized entities. But here today, I'm representing the Cayman Islands Society for Human Resource Professionals, which is also a nonprofit, and I sit on the board as a vice president at the moment.
Yeah, as I just look around, from our civil servants to our private sector partners, to ladies like yourselves who don't only see the importance of achieving great academic accolades, but applying that in a society as diverse as Cayman, and as important to be global, but to also be locally focused. So, Ms. Marissa, I believe I have a lot to learn today. I brought
Yes,
my
you
pen. I'm
do.
taking notes.
And especially about honoring Women's Month in Cayman. So we have been celebrating honoring Women's Month in Cayman for the past 25 years. So this is a big milestone for us. And the aim of it really is to raise awareness and to educate the public, the community, about issues that women face and how can we combat those issues. And an important part really is to celebrate the achievements of women all around, right? So this year, the theme is Inspire Inclusion. And when we inspire inclusion, we are able to forge a more inclusive world for women. And we inspire others to understand and to value women's inclusion as well.
I certainly appreciate that you've put much into preparing for discussion, and are even more mindful that instead of having a discussion that could extend over days, we could condense it almost into seconds, given the press briefing. Ms. Carleen, may I pivot to you now and asking? I defer to the late night comedians sometimes, stand-up comics, where in today's world they make a lot of jokes about a lot of things, but in that, think of George Carlin, for instance, there's a lot of philosophy in it. And the rhetoric from many of the comedians, ever since we put a man on the moon, why can't we do this? 2024, and yet women in Cayman, not just in the region, not just in the Western Hemisphere, globally, women are still not paid equally, still not given that level of respect that they deserve. And in the absence of a woman, where would we be?
Exactly. And it's interesting that you say that, Sterling, because despite the fact that there are laws that actually talk about equal pay for equal work, then at the end of the day, it then comes down to the actual company making sure that they're compliant with that law. And sadly, one of the things here is that it seems that there are persons who are not even aware of the Gender Equality Act, based on even a survey that GEC just did recently, and they have done it over time. Many persons, both the staff and some of the companies perhaps, are not aware of that act. So in our context, again, it comes down to attitudes and, this whole thing of bias and so forth. And how do we really make sure that we are doing the right thing? And when we do the right thing for women, we're doing the right thing for the whole society.
Right should trump might. Ms. Kathy, if I may ask, certainly, well, let me first welcome you, and you can share as you wish because this is about doing the right thing always, right? But welcome. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's great to be here. Out of my, I normally have to talk about tax, but this is my most favorite topic to talk about. That for those that know me, so
we can talk about taxes.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We're good. But I just I want all the listeners to understand how lovely the purple ladies that are here. We've got purple. Carlene has her hair is representing, her outfit's representing, and it's pretty fun to be here. And I really like to be able to cross.
She's
with
purpleized.
She's purpleized. She's purpleized.
Indeed. I'm all about it.
She's all about it. She looks lovely. She looks lovely. But yeah, it's really great to be here and to be part of this conversation. Obviously, I see it from a very personal perspective within my organization, and then also watching my peers, colleagues, and across the globe, just not in Cayman. We all are having this conversation, and to keep this conversation going, which is really important, and how we can help move that move forward positively, progressively, and constructively is really important. Carlene, if I jump just a little bit on the bias piece, I think that's the really important thing to focus on, which I know we may get to here in a bit, but just talking about our unconscious bias that we may have, and then how that affects organizations. Right?
If I might ask, though, Ms. Cathy, from that perspective, in the Cayman context, is it similar to creatives who talk about the big fish in the small pond? Is it easier for us to identify and really see the biases, the disparity in pay, promotion? It's not long about the merit, it's about gender. So is it easy in Cayman to correct it as it would be in, say, the global north?
I think that's the tricky thing about it. It's really hard to recognize it sometimes. I think you don't realize it's there when it is there until you actually take the time and the moment to acknowledge it. And I think that's sometimes the problem is a lot of times that biases is at a senior level. And so they don't see their own biases, right? And that's just inherently, wherever you live, you're going to have that. I think one of the things that Cayman is really great about, and from the gender, female perspective, is the organizations of women are very strong in Cayman. So the awareness of, I think, within our companies and on the island is pretty high. But it's there.
It's there.
It's there.
All right.
And just to say that sometimes that awareness seems to work against us, and the strength of the community and the women advocates seem to work against us as well, because sometimes people will ask, what are you talking about? There's gender inequality, because they see that there are women in professional settings, there are women at manager partner level, like Cathy, for example, and forget that that's just a minute, amount. And then when you look at other levels within the workforce, and I'll share some of those numbers from the census, where women are in general, and where the bigger mass of women are in terms of wages, etc. We forget then that yes, there is still gender inequality. And I'm sure that Hannah can speak about, from the HR perspective, how much of that she sees and how that integrates into hiring and recruitment and then promotion through the company.
I love you because I was referencing, wrote it down. Perfect.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm fairly lucky. I have been on island for 30 odd years, if you can believe that. But I've been fairly lucky that I haven't ever personally felt like haven't been an equal in terms of gender. I did previously work with Stepping Stones, and anybody that knows them as a company, it is a powerhouse of women, all at the top. It's completely run and operated by strong women in leadership. But from a HR perspective, in terms of what kind of employers can do in terms of putting in their policy, is really trying to have consistency, I think, is really important to try and minimize any type of bias. So I know in the public sector, it's fairly specific as to what you have to do when you're going through a recruitment process. There's a lot of kind of steps and policy already in place. Private sector, we're a little bit different. We can kind of do what we want. It's a lot more flexible, but trying to put like a specific policy in place that is consistent. So when you're hiring for a manager or you're hiring for an administrator or a receptionist, it doesn't really matter. You always ask the same questions. You always follow the same hiring matrix. You have the same interview panel, just to eliminate any potential bias, and try and involve everyone. I find that if you involve the people that are obviously touching those roles, if you involve those people, then you can kind of ensure that you again, you have that consistency. You can minimize that bias, and everyone then feels included. Women, men, everybody in the organization. We're all making the same kind of collective decisions. Yeah.
All right, so after the break, let's get into that. I mean, this is where, as we talk about it, we might actually be able to address it because we've acknowledged it and no longer willing to just bury our heads in the sand. So after the break, I have a number of questions. Who's going to win the next World Cup? Oh, sorry. Wrong notes. So listeners, join us after the break.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard the news? Digicel is back with exciting offers that are too good to resist. Activate one of our brand new prepaid or postpaid plans today and experience telecommunications like never before. With more data, dedicated entertainment options like Netflix, YouTube, Spotify, and endless social text data for all your favorite platforms. Digicel is here to make sure you stay connected and entertained. Whether you are on a prepaid or postpaid, you will also enjoy dedicated roaming data for the USA, Canada, and the Caribbean. It's all about value, and Digicel has got you covered. From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway Box to Go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Cayman Turtle Center is doing it again. Get ready to crawl, walk, or run. Lace up your sneakers and join us as we stride for conservation on March 17th at the 4th Annual Turtle Crawl 5K Walk Run, hosted by the Cayman Turtle Center. For just $25, you can be a part of this incredible event with every step you take supporting the conservation efforts for the majestic green sea turtles of the Cayman Islands. Sign up today at turtlecrawl.ky and secure your spot in this unforgettable experience. We extend a huge thank you to our amazing sponsors: Advanced Fire and Plumbing, CG Britke, CUC, Gatorade, DMS Broadcasting, Blue Water Medical Supplies, Yanni's Photography, Double M Distribution, Corporate Electric, Cryo 345, and Radio Cayman. Join us bright and early on Sunday, March 17th at 6:30 a.m. at the Cayman Turtle Center. Register now and don't miss out on the fun.
Discover your dream home with Cayman National's home loan. Get up to 95% financing, repayment up to 40 years, and just a 0.5% commitment fee. Your interest rate? Depending on your risk factors, it'll be fixed or variable. Plus, you get a pre-approved credit card. This is a limited time offer. Dial 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
Interested in learning more about inclusion, diversity, and equity? On March 11th, 12th, and 13th, equity consultant Desiree Phillips will host 3 workshops designed to teach participants the foundation of diversity and inclusion, challenge them to reimagine self-care, or enlighten them on how identity and experience shape vulnerable populations served within the helping professions. All workshops are free to the public through the Family Resource Center. Registration is required. To view their Honoring Women Month calendar, visit frc.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to this wonderful assembled panel as we have a discussion, not just fostering inclusion as we celebrate part of Honoring Women Month, but Ms. Marissa, if we come back to you, is it that we are now in the Cayman context, and even say the global north generally, expecting that there'll be not just women included, women pilots, women on the front lines in the battlefields, women presidents of organizations and countries? Is that the expected norm, or is that still part of that realization that we have a long way to go?
So it is a twofold. It is the expected norm, and there's also more work to be done, and a part of that starts with education, raising awareness. And so it is important that when we are bringing attention to these issues, we organize events that is geared towards education and to raise awareness. And when we talk about inclusion, we have to talk about representation as well. So we are speaking about women inclusion, but are women really represented across, the board? So when we look at, say, the leadership position, we're looking at ethnicity, we're looking at physical abilities and so on. So we have to look at the representation aspect of it as well. And just to put in context as it relates to the educational part of it. So for this year, we have organized a number of events geared towards raising awareness and to educate the public. And I just want to plug before we go back into the discussion. So for the first, to honor our 25th year of Honoring Women's Month in Cayman, we'll be hosting our gala. It will be an evening of excellence, and that will be on the 8th. The main speaker will be Miss Desiree Phillips. She celebrated with us last year. She is an equity consultant out of Canada and also registered psychotherapist. So it is important to be having conversation with people who are working in the field, who are seeing the trends and who know, the changes, are able to identify the changes that needs to happen. We also have other workshops. So from the 11th to the 13th, we will be doing workshops as well, and that's free to the public. And I'll speak more to those towards the end of our show today.
Okay. Yes, Carlene, certainly jump in and share, because we would like this particular time for you to share collectively to our listeners. But based on what Ms. Marisha just shared relative to ethnicity, in the Cayman context, when we look at women, their pay, their positions and the like, do things like race and ethnicity, do even nationality come into play? As an example, in the financial services, Caribbean woman of color employed with an accounting firm, or a law firm, but equal qualifications with a European woman or a North American one, equally qualified, equal experience, would we expect them to be equally rewarded, or do we see disparities?
By law, we should expect them to be equally rewarded.
Yeah.
And I'll keep going back to law,
By law.
because that is the part that I am concerned about, and work within. And if the case is that it is not, then I want them to know that they have recourse in terms of going through the Gender Equality Tribunal, because that's what the purpose of that tribunal is, to make sure that women, regardless of age, race, whatever, marital status, pregnancy status, that they actually are paid equally. As I said, equal work for equal pay. But going back to, so we may not actually have the data in relation to any racial discrimination, because of course it's going to take courageousness for people to come out and say, well, I don't think that my employer is treating me right. However, if we look around just in terms of what nationalities we might see in certain sectors, let's go back to COVID for a little while, when we were looking at essential workers. So we were looking at cashiers, we were looking at people who were sort of what we consider the lower end of the scale. There are a lot of migrants in that particular area. And then the question then remains, and we're talking about minimum wage, but we won't get into that today.
I can see that
after the press conference. But just from just observing, you can then figure out sort of who is where in the scales. And obviously then that then reaches into housing, accommodation, poverty, etc., etc. So there's a lot of information there that may not actually be written down, but just based on observation, you can tell. And just to bring our attention to the census of 2021 actually showed good on the good side. Let me start with the good side. That in the professional category, females were actually 21%, as opposed to 15.9% of males in that category. So there is one area at least where we have women up there. However, on the other hand, in terms of managers, there was just a small difference in terms of how much males and females are managers. 11% of managers are male and 10% are female. However, when you go down to areas like skilled agricultural and forestry and craft and construction, of course, in those areas, it was almost like 10 times more men in those sectors than women. And then again, going back to those elementary operations there, and those occupations like the cashiers and so forth, then the females again outnumbered men in those areas. So I mean, those numbers speak for themselves, in terms of where people are.
Kathy, you want to jump in, or you want me to ask?
No, I can jump in just a point there. I think the key thing that I kind of remind myself, and I think about it, is when you look at an organization or a company or whatever it might be, how is the senior decision-making leadership? How are they in that makeup representative of the wider organization? And that's when the numbers can say what the numbers can say, but then you can look at that and you see, well, they all look like that, they all sound like that, they all had the same this and that, but then you look at the wider organization, are they representative? And that is, I think, really the critical point of making sure that is representative through there, so that people that are in more junior, lower paid positions, right? This is how we fix the gender gap, is if they can see someone that looks like them, sounds like them, that they have made that, they've broken that ceiling, right? So I feel pretty strongly about that. That's really important when we talk about the fairness there.
Yeah.
Get that right.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you if I can just jump in.
Yes, yes.
From an HR perspective, when we're looking at the CSHRP and our membership, I was doing the numbers yesterday, and 88% of our membership are female, which is fantastic from a member standpoint. That means there's 88% of HR managers arguably out there that are female, and that's kind of always been the way. I think HR is a very female-dominant industry. It kind of requires a little bit of empathy, and that always just assumes it's the woman. We do have 12% of men, right, in our membership. They are in HR. But the nice thing that I'm seeing when Kathy is talking about representing at the top is that HR now really has a seat at that top table, so they can really make a decision. They're part of the decision-making process. They affect what the organization does. So I think that is a step in the right direction, at least.
Right. That issue of leadership and representation and who makes those decisions, whether it's politicians, even in that. Luckily, right now, for example, we have five females in the House, and that's a significant number from what we have had before. But still, there is still a way to go. And I think the point that Hannah made in terms of HR, it traditionally we have had the situation where all of the sort of nurturing occupations, the nurses, the teachers, etc., all of those what we call almost like soft touch occupations have traditionally been women. And what we want to see is that it becomes the norm that other occupations also have women in there, which is why, like, I know, for example, one of the things that FRC has done is looked at how do we train girls to get into those STEM programs and make sure that they're thinking about things outside of those traditional roles and occupations.
I'm told we got that scheduled break. Let's take it. I serve chocolate during the break. All right, to our listeners, stay tuned.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I go in flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old girl.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
Find your dream car with a Cayman National Vehicle Loan. Enjoy 100% financing, up to 8-year repayment, and a 7% fixed interest rate for the first 5 years. For eco-friendly cars, we'll waive your commitment fee. This only applies to new vehicles. Call 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
Join Water Authority for the grand opening of its Cayman Brac Customer Service Office at the Avistar Building, Friday, 8 March, 10 a.m. till 12 noon. If you register for the new customer portal account or apply for piped water service, you will be entered for a chance to win a new phone or a water service gift certificate. Plus, you can meet the team and enjoy some refreshments. It all happens on Friday, 8 March, 10 a.m.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and to Miss Carly, Miss Marissa, and Kathy, and Hannah. Hey, thank you all. I'm hoping that this discussion will foster within our families, that we will tell our young ladies, our gentlemen as well, what is right, and to champion that, and to see that perhaps I'm leaving here thinking, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. That sense of equalness, being fair, is something that maybe we've taken for granted, not done enough to equal pay for equal work, right? What is it we said, a man may work from sun to sun, but a woman's work is never done.
It's true. 3 times the amount of. But we want to change that.
Yeah.
And I think that Kathy has a very, very good example of how we can change that.
Yeah.
This idea of egalitarianism within our households, which is where everything else starts, because we have to remember that is where attitudes and ideologies form. Kathy, would you like to tell them your story?
Well, we just teed this up perfectly for me. Yeah, I think it's it's amazing to think about what happens at home and how that does, form future generations and demonstrates equality to our children. I've got 2 sons. I'm married, so I'm outnumbered at home in gender. And I remember someone said, "Oh, you're going to have boys. You had boys. You didn't have girls. What about your feminists?" And all that. I was like, "Oh, I've got some male feminists that are going up there." And what's really important for me is that my children see my husband and I in a very equal partnership, so that we give and take, and there's a balance there. So I'm talking about him, even though he's not here. So maybe he's listening. Hopefully he is.
Paul called him to listen.
I told him to listen. I did tell him to listen. But he does do a great job, and it's very important, I think, within the organization, and they see the children and within the family unit see fairness and helping out, and that it's not just this person's role. We all have to help out, and we all have to demonstrate that, and then that will be how they grow up, and that will be how they look for their future partners, how they demonstrate at work in their professional life. They won't see that difference as much.
Yeah. But if I might, though, from the male perspective, I want to commend you, because you're a strong, independent lady who embraces her partner, and he doing these things, it isn't seen as he, soft, sissy. He's not less than. He's complimenting you, picking up the slack, taking it sometimes more than ever, pivoting to you when necessary.
Well, I mean, I'm spectacular, so he's really
Obviously. Yeah. I mean,
no, it's a huge thing, and it's what makes us work, but it's also I think we can all appreciate that I wouldn't have been able to be successful without that support, and that is, and my success is our success, and vice versa. So I feel very privileged to have that, but also I think it's really important for those listening is to pick partners and spouses and whomever that you surround, friends that support you and support your dreams and your ambitions, and tell you when it gets hard that you can do it. And I think that's really important.
Before I ask Hannah, if I might, Ms. Crowley, come to you on that, because in this community sometimes we send mixed messages. There is perhaps, to Kathy's example, there may be people who don't know and see it, admire it, but some would say, well, oh boy, she wears the pants, without realizing how disrespectful they're being to the entire society, not just to that family.
Exactly.
For me, here's a guy that I'm like, I want to take a page from your book, man.
Precisely. And I think one of the most beautiful things that I see is when I see a man with a baby on his shoulder, and then he's also pushing the stroller. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think it's important for us, even as women, to appreciate those things that men do to support us, to support their family, to support the society. Because at the end of the day, we'll all get along better, and some of us will be less tired if we also accept that help as well.
Yeah. It's that partnership. But Hannah, that's in the home, but then to what extent does that translate into the workplace? So sometimes in the workplace, the job needs to be, this particular project. We're not looking so much at, male and female, we want skill sets. And that sense of, being egalitarian, but, equalness.
Yeah. It's I'm a very strong believer, and hopefully a lot of people are similar mindset to me, that if it doesn't matter if you're a female or a male, or your color or your race or your religion, if you can do the job, do it. You're going to be the one to do it. It really doesn't. It shouldn't matter. And to Carlene's point, there is laws in place to help prevent this, right? And we need to remember that. And really, again, from my standpoint, for a lot of the clients I work with, I haven't really seen it so much, which is lovely for me. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, because it does. It's harder to recognize, as we've mentioned already, but yeah, I think we're all a team, as we are in the office, as we are at home. We're stronger together than separated by our genders.
What's the song? We are one.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that too. Just going back to what Kathy says, representation is important, because especially women who are in leadership position and leadership roles, it is important, that you are emulating a certain or modeling a certain kind of behavior, so that other younger women, young girls can see that and aspire to be in leadership position as well. And this is also where mentorship comes in. That's a very big part of it, just to reach down and to help those women who are not yet there to get to a place where they feel included, they feel like they belong and they feel valued. And of course, when you feel included, you're empowered to do more and to be greater than what, or what levels limitation that's placed on you. So it is important also that women in leadership really offer that support to others.
Yeah, and if I can just pipe into that, because that's so important, and I take that role very seriously. But the other piece is allyship, and that is so important because that is on the responsibility of everyone to be an ally for everybody.
You read my mind, because I was going to say that we shouldn't also assume that women have to mentor women. Yes, it is good, but at the same time, I think that it's important for men to play a part in this and sponsorship, essentially, and allyship and all of that. And I think the important thing, just going back to what Hannah talked about, if the opportunities, if we have made sure that the opportunities are there in the first place for women and girls to get those same skills, then fine, we can then be talking about, generally, let's pick the person with the best skills. But if we have not done that, then we're still putting people at a disadvantage.
Yeah, in recognizing the space we occupy now, where sometimes ethnicity, race, nationality, all those things play. I have a vision where, we come to the table and it's all about what the person brings, irrespective of who the person is. That may sound idealistic, but I think it's realizable. And to see leaders like yourselves who share that vision, I think it's something that is attainable.
And if we don't have that level playing field, is it a situation where we need to be putting quotas in place for certain things and working on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those discussions where whether it's minimum wage and impact, whether it's those quotas and the like, how do we get to that space where that attempt at affirmative action, as the Americans call it, is going to be a success and not be a token gesture. Not easy, I think. Because Kathy, I don't know, but maybe at some point, whether it's this month with all the activities, but thereafter, these are discussions that we should continue to have, and it will help our young ladies see the examples of other ladies who are doctors and engineers, who are carpenters and plumbers, who are fighter jet pilots, who may decide, I want to be a fashion designer, and whatever that role is that may have traditionally been seen as, a role that a woman has done, she's doing it because she has an interest and an ability, not because it's a gender-defined traditional role.
And as I was talking about some of the beautiful scenes I see, when I see a woman on a construction site, go girl, you do that.
You know what? Okay, I'm totally press briefing will be up shortly. Let's talk until he tells us that we don't talk. Miss Hannah, are there other words of encouragement and pearls of wisdom that you want to share?
Yeah, I think one of the last things, since we have time to say, is as an employer, if you're wondering, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? Ask your employees what they want. Talk to the women that work in your organization. See what it is you can offer to be more supportive, whether that's more sick days, that they can take when their kids are sick, or a better maternity leave, or flexible working.
This is the people.
All of that.
You so I did that ventriloquist, man.
Any of those kind of additional benefits. But ask your employees what they want, get them included. They will feel more empowered when they're included.
Respectfully, ladies, I'm told it's starting.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Findings of the 2023 Minimum Wage Advisory Committee's final report. Joining us on the panel today are Mr. Lemuel Hurlston, chairperson and previous chairperson of the 2015 committee, as well as Mr. Adolphus Laidlow, director of the Economics and Statistics Office. Also with us, we have committee member Ms. Maureen Nabby, who is representing the Business and Professional Women's Club, and last but not least, Mr. Wesley Howell, our Chief Officer from the Ministry of Border Control, Labor, and Culture. Also joining us in the studio today are senior members of government and members of the media. We go first to Mr. Lemuel Hurlston, who will provide an overview of the committee, its findings, and the recommendations of the report. Mr. Lemuel?
Thank you, Donna. The Minimum Wage Advisory Committee first convened in January 2023 and was given the mandate to do the following four things. One, to investigate the adequacy of the current minimum wage. Two, to research and collect a wide range of data to consider the impact of a new minimum wage at various wage points. Three, to consider whether the country should establish various minimum wages for specific industries, sectors, age groups. Or four, to provide the agreed findings and recommendations in a final report. The membership of the committee had representation from the 2015 committee, from the Cayman Islands Legal Practitioners Association, University College of the Cayman Islands, the Economic and Statistics Office, the Business and Professional Women's Club, Cayman Contractors Association, the Cayman Islands Small Businesses Association, Cayman Finance, the Cayman Islands Tourism Association, the Chamber of Commerce, civil society, including youth and a Sister Islands representative. The International Labour Organization was also engaged for technical support to utilize data obtained to determine the adequacy of the existing minimum wage and implications for any proposed increase. The committee undertook a period of information gathering through efforts undertaken by the Economic and Statistics Office and through various consultation efforts, which my colleagues will speak to shortly. After this process was complete, we began a tripartite negotiation between the employer, employee, and civil society representatives to come to an agreed recommendation that everyone could get behind. One of the areas of debate was whether the committee should be considering a living wage instead of a minimum wage. A living wage is a wage that allows a worker to attain a socially acceptable living standard, and this approach is typically not legally binding, as a socially acceptable living standard is difficult to define legally. Alternatively, a minimum wage protects against undue low pay and ensures a just and equitable share of the economic wealth to all, provides a minimum living for unskilled employed persons, and helps to overcome poverty and reduced inequality. The committee therefore agreed that a living wage was outside of the current mandate and that a focus should instead be made on the upskilling of Caymanians to increase their earning potential rather than mandating businesses to hire low-skilled staff at high cost. Through this approach, a minimum wage gradually moves towards a living wage over time. After 37 meetings of information gathering and negotiations, the committee has completed its mandate and produced a final report of its recommendations for Cabinet's consideration. There are 5 main recommendations outlined in the report, and they are as follows. 1. A new minimum wage of $8.75 per hour. 2. A phasing out of the gratuity contribution to the base minimum wage for employees in the hospitality industry on approved gratuity schemes. The current contribution of 25% is to be reduced by 5% annually. 3. Continuation of the household in-kind credits, a maximum of 25%, that is $2.19 per hour, in-kind credit for accommodations and utilities only, to be applied to the $8.75 per hour gross minimum wage only for household employers with live-in employees beginning July 2024. 4. A minimum wage adjustment mechanism intended to systematically adjust the minimum wage using the Consumer Price Index inflation as a base every 2 years beginning in July 2025. This triggers an automatic adjustment of the minimum wage, resulting in one of the following, depending on the Consumer Price Index. And we produced a chart in the report itself, which says that Where the consumer price index is less than 2%, there'll be no adjustment, no increment. From 2% to 3.5%, there'll be an adjustment of 25 cents. Above 3.5%, but less than 5%, a 50 cents adjustment. And in excess of 5%, to be carried over to the subsequent adjustment quadrennial minimum wage review. 5, a student minimum wage of $6 for persons 12 to 17 years of age to encourage employers to hire young Caymanians instead of taking out work permits for certain types of labor, and to also encourage young Caymanians to enter the labor force early. An additional hope is that young Caymanians will develop good work ethic and discipline by entering the workforce at an earlier stage. It should be noted that the timelines included in the report had adjustments beginning from July 2024, a full phasing out of the gratuity contributions by July 2029, and the implementation of a minimum wage adjustment mechanism by July 2025. However, given the timeline we are currently on, these recommended timelines for implementation are likely no longer viable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlston, for that. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Adolphus Laidlaw, the Director of the Economics and Statistics Office. He will provide insight into ESO's findings and the economic implications of the minimum wage. Mr. Laidlaw?
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, everyone listening to this briefing today. Following the remarks from Mr. Hurlston, the chair of the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee, let me declare up front I don't have a speech. I have a series of bullet points which I will talk about during this briefing. Our role as representative ESO on the committee was really to put facts to the discussion. And as a result, we were responsible for a lot of the research and collection of data and analysis of that data. Now, I was assisted by the staff of the ESO, namely Mr. Ralston Hurlston, who is sitting in the back, our senior economist, and the economics unit of the ESO. I was also assisted by senior statistician Travis Walters. He did a lot of the IT-related work, and I just want to say thank you to Mr. Ralston, the economics unit, Travis Walters, and the ESO. From the onset, our job on the committee was to keep the committee grounded in facts, as I said earlier, and we thought it was important to set realistic thresholds at the start of the initial discussion. So our aim was to obtain members' agreement on what we call an upper and a lower limit boundary. Now, the reason we were doing this is because we wanted to make sure that the economy is not severely affected. Because with minimum wage, persons may think that $15 is okay to the person receiving the money, but it may not be okay for the persons paying the money. So we had to set the parameters for the persons in terms of the business ability to pay, and at the same time, employees not falling under the poverty line. So that threshold went from $6.44 up to $9. So in other words, what I'm saying is that the minimum wage could not be set below $6.44 because you set it at the poverty line, and it could not be set above $9 because a lot of the small businesses will be severely affected and as a result would not have the ability to pay. Other deliberation, because the tripartite committee on one end, we had the representative of employees and the representatives of employers, and the negotiation ensued. Hence, the final result being the $8.75, which is less than the $9. Also, what we did is contact the ILO. The ILO is a specialist organization on labor setting and minimum wage regime, and they analyzed the data, submitted a report to the committee, and their findings was follows. In 2022, the minimum wage level has lost 18% of its purchasing power since 2016. In 2023, this loss will likely increase to about 31%. That was their first summary conclusion. What they advise is that social dialogue and bargaining should be informed by statistical indicators, and they should be fundamental to any wage-setting regime. Thirdly, the current minimum wage of $6 was 27.8% of the average wage of the population, which they considered to be considerably low by international standards, and more so a high-income country. And finally, the ILO suggested that the minimum wage could be increased to about $10.50 per hour to reach approximately 50% of the nominal hourly wage rate. However, they also cautioned that adjusting the proposed minimum wage should be gradual, such that undue impact on businesses are not realized immediately. Now, in terms of the impact on the minimum wage, I will look at the beneficiaries. The proposed minimum wage of $8 could directly impact 10,457 persons. Now, these persons are the count from the labor force survey as at mid-2023, just before we submitted our report in October. Of these, over 8,000 employees of businesses and over 2,400 are from households. 23% of the beneficiaries would be low-income Caymanians, 77% are non-Caymanians. Females make up 60.2%, and males 39.8%. In addition to the 10,457 persons directly benefiting, another 2,200 up to 2,500 persons earning in the margin of 15% above the stated minimum wage could potentially see their income increase also, simply because as we bring up the lower band closer to those persons, they would have had extra skills and extra responsibilities, supervisory responsibilities that is, that now needs to go higher so they can supervise persons with minimum wage. So those persons may be affected. What are the costs of the minimum wage? The overall cost to the economy is estimated at $51.5 million in annual terms. The businesses will pay approximately 38.7 if implemented, and household 12.8 million. From the business side, Caymanian employees could receive $13.2 million, and non-Caymanian would receive the other 38.3 million. From the household side, Caymanian employees will receive only 0.6 billion, while non-Caymanians will receive 12.2 million, and these are all in annual terms. In the context of the overall economy, the total minimum wage payout is equivalent to approximately 2.1% of the national wage bill. What I mean when I say the national wage bill, I'm talking about when every firm who's paying, everybody who's receiving some kind of remuneration for labor, the total of that figure is $2.51 billion a year in the Cayman Islands, which is approximately 46% of the GDP. And I'm taking these figures from the 2022 GDP report. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website, eso.ky. Industries with the highest number of low-paying employees, elementary occupation, persons who are employed at households. These persons will see approximately $102 more in their salaries. Next, we had accommodation establishment. On average, persons employed at those establishments can see approximately $100 more on their weekly pay. Restaurants and mobile food services, an extra $95, and administrative and support activities, now, which include persons like security guards, janitorial and cleaning services, car rental workers, and the like. They will receive approximately $88 on their weekly pay. The impact on small businesses, as I said before, small businesses will pay approximately $38.3 million. Businesses with 5 or less employees will see 2,100 employees benefiting. Firms with 50 or more could see approximately an equivalent 2,100 persons benefiting. On average, business with up to 5 employees can incur an additional cost of just $103 per week per employee, while firms with employees between 6 and 10 and businesses 50 or more will see approximately $87 per employee per week more. In terms of households, just over 2,400 persons were employed at the household at a cost of $12.9 million. Caymanian employment in the household accounts for 4.7%, which is just a little over 100 persons, and non-Caymanian is 95.3%, the vast majority. Generally, household employees will see approximately $102 of additional income weekly. In terms of the impact of the minimum wage on unemployment, based on the business surveys that we conducted, what we saw is that we asked businesses the question, if the minimum wage increased by $1, what would your response be? If it increased by $2, what would your response be? And that went up to $4 because we want to gauge how it will impact the economy. That's what we wanted to do. Businesses said if it increased generally between 3 to 4, then they will basically make some persons redundant. Some persons will lose their jobs. And as you know, the minimum wage increase just under $3. So we are hoping the negative consequences, of unemployment is not increased. But generally, when we put all that survey together, what we tabulate is that about 700 persons can lose their jobs based on what the businesses said. What we would say from the ESO perspective, it is hard to believe that 700 of persons, of what we will call essential persons, losing their jobs given this economic climate, given that they are security guards. Do you get rid of security guards because you have to pay more? And do you get rid of domestic helpers because you pay a little more? So it's very unlikely. So at the ESO, what we thought is that you would lose more, it's more around 200 persons could possibly lose their job rather than 700 as tabulated from businesses. In terms of consumer price index, because I know this is an area that a lot of people will be concerned about in terms of passing on the costs, every firm in the Cayman Islands do not have low-income employees. And each firm have different proportion of low-income employees. So what is likely to happen is that the firms with the highest costs are likely to try to pass it on, if it's possible to pass it on. Because in some cases, it may not be possible. It depends on competition in the marketplace as to whether you can pass it on or not. If it is that the firms who can pass it on, we estimate that approximately 3.1% inflation will result. And some of I'm just going to list some of the type of businesses that we will expect that to happen. Will be personal services, meaning that the hairdressers, sorry ladies, barbers and other beauty treatments, pet care services, washing and dry cleaning, businesses that involve in personal care are likely to increase prices up to 22.9%. That's about 1/5. Administrative and support services, which is the security guards, janitorial services, could increase prices approximately 10.2%. Agricultural products, 7%. Restaurant food could be up to about 5%. Art, entertainment, and recreation, 4.1%. Wholesale and retail could be increase about 3.1%. In terms of economic growth, the extra spending for that 51.2 million can result in a 0.9% increase in economic growth. Now, in terms of inflation, I just want to take you back to one of the surveys that was conducted by the ESO. And we want to say that the supermarkets as an example, which I know a lot of persons will be concerned about, supermarket raising their prices. When we surveyed the supermarkets, they said that the average price that they can afford to pay was $8.31. And the maximum they'd be willing to pay was $12. So it means that the maximum they're willing to pay, we still have some wiggle room between that area. When we surveyed households, the household said that they're already paying $12 on average. So if the minimum wage is below that, then there should be no impact on the majority of households. I think I wanted to explain a little bit the adjustment mechanism, but I think Chairman Holston already covered some of that. Just to say though that with the minimum wage adjustment, the key, what we thought was that by putting such an adjustment, it will help businesses not to have to suffer the consequences of unknown inflation, increase in minimum wage, and to smooth expenditure. So it is designed such that at no time, no matter what inflation is, the minimum wage will not increase by more than 50 cents. I just wanted to make that clear, no matter what. So if we take to say 2031, then with the 6 years between that time, the most the minimum wage can increase by is really $1.50, no matter the level of inflation if it's high. That's the most it can increase by. So with this, I think I gave a synopsis of the impact on the economy. And thank you for listening, and I hope I explained some of the issues, and I want you to go and read the report and see for yourself.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Laidlow. Next up is committee member Ms. Maureen Nabi. She represents the Business and Professional Women's Club. She'll speak to the public consultation that was actually conducted, as well as highlight some of the information that was gathered.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Donna, and thank you for everyone who's tuned in. I'm going to take us through a little overview of the public consultation process, what that entailed, and a few key data points that have informed the final recommendations. So the public consultation, it was ensured public consultation and internal consultation were comprehensive, transparent, and fair, and you'll see that as I summarize some of the stakeholders who we engaged with. So the first piece of consultation was a set of presentations that was done to the committee during the committee's meeting times. And that included a presentation from the Department of Labor and Pensions, which gave us a legislative overview for a full understanding of the legislation that we were working within, and also the gratuity framework, how that currently works, and enforcement issues that DLP had been seeing. ESO, as Mr. Adolphus has referred to, also did a number of presentations. One of them was to help us understand the poverty line, the vulnerability line, what that means for Cayman in its current economy, methodologies, different methodologies we may consider and look at for determining the next minimum wage, and insights into how a change in minimum wage would affect Caymanians specifically. We also engaged with a consultation from the Needs Assessment Unit about how their current financial program works and how that actually may be impacted by any change to minimum wage. Work also provided its insights into particular jobs and profiles and industries that pay minimum wage currently, and the level of education currently associated with those on average. The Ministry of Social Development provided some insight into what the Financial Act of 2022 means and how it impacts minimum wage. And then we actually had an open call to employers and other business stakeholders and employee groups, advocacy groups, to say if anyone had any interest in coming to present to us, that they could express that interest and we would engage them for a presentation. So a number of organizations did take us up on that offer, and some of them sent written recommendations and thoughts, while we actually had 3 presentations from the Chamber of Commerce, one from the Cayman Islands Tourism Association, and one from the Cayman Contractors Association. The Minimum Wage Committee actually also engaged Cordell Riley. So Cordell Riley is the chairman of the Bermuda Wage Commission, which recently in June 2023 determined a national minimum wage for Bermuda of $16.40 US per hour. And he provided some insights on what their process was and what considerations they had made. The committee really wanted to provide the opportunity for the public to have space in that consultation as well. And so the committee, on behalf, in collaboration with the ESO, conducted 2 surveys, a household survey and a business employer survey. The household survey included a question on the spring 2023 labor force survey as well. Most households surveyed actually proposed a minimum wage of $10 an hour, including households with employees, and most households indicated that they would continue to keep their employees irrespective of a price increase to the minimum wage. So this echoes what Mr. Adolphus was saying earlier. Over 350 businesses participated in the business employers survey, and the results indicated an average recommendation of $8.49 per hour. The committee also conducted a comprehensive public engagement exercise, which included town halls, virtual and in person, and a number of surveys. Over 10,000 people took part in that, and a lot of time was dedicated to engagement on social channels as well. Online surveys provided us with the largest set of data at over 5,000 responses. Just under 60% of the people who responded indicated that they were Caymanian. There was an overwhelming support from the consultation for an increase in the minimum wage, and also an overwhelming support for a balanced approach that sufficiently considered employers and the impact on employers, as well as any negative impact that may occur on local businesses. In terms of commentary, the rising cost of living was a large piece of the comments that came through, and the average proposed minimum wage received via that public engagement survey was $10 to $11 CI per hour, except for the household employers who I'd mentioned earlier said 9 to 10 was the range that would work. A sample of organizations were also invited to participate in an online survey specific to them, and of the responses, 88% expressed that the current minimum wage was insufficient, 81% indicated that it did not meet the basic cost of living in the Cayman Islands, and 100% of those respondents indicated that it needed to be increased, with 54% of them indicating that an increase of $4 would be acceptable. The overall findings of the consultation conducted was that the existing minimum wage of $6 an hour is insufficient and does not allow those in receipt to meet their basic costs of living. Those are some key overview points of the consultation process and data points that have helped informed these final recommendations. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Nabi. We now go to Mr. Wesley Howell, the Chief Officer from the Ministry of Border Control and Labor, as well as Culture, for final remarks.
Thank you, Donna, and I just want to say thank you from the ministry perspective on the hard work that was done by Mr. Helston and the rest of the Minimum Wage Committee. They had very active and engaging conversations, both internally amongst themselves, but also with the general public, business owners and employees alike. No small feat to get to a recommendation. It is a testament to their work that they've done, particularly looking at the economic impact, as well as the poverty line, to come with a recommendation that is somewhere in the middle. And just want to thank the team that worked from the Department of Labor, Mr. Tisha Goring, Diana Roberts from the ministry, who worked very hard to support the committee, Deputy Chief Officer Debbie Ann Whitaker. So lots of work went on to ensure that they had the administrative support necessary to move this along and get to the point that the report's been now tabled by Cabinet and public hearing now for further consultation.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Howell. It's time now to open up the floor to members of the media. We begin with Ms. Reshma from the Compass.
Thank you very much, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. I guess my first question is, where's the minister? Why don't we have the minister here to kind of inform this conversation?
This is a listening exercise. I'm here to represent the ministry and the minister. We really want to hear from general public, the employers who now have a number that's made public and gather that feedback. We have a month to get that feedback, and then the minister will take that forward to Cabinet. So while he's not here, this work is really for his consideration and further consideration by caucus and Cabinet.
All right, Wesley, sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot there. You said a listening process. Does that mean that the government hasn't decided on raising the minimum wage or has agreed with the figure that the committee has put forward?
At this point, the government's noted the amount that is there and really wants to have the public feedback on this. And that was a specific requirement from the Cabinet, is to go back out with the exact numbers, the entire report, so folks can see the work that's gone in the consultation that's there and the economics as set out by the team from ESO. And then that will go back for a final decision.
All right, so you said a month for the consultation period.
Yes.
Do you have a timeline for when we will actually have a firm answer from government on, yes, we are moving forward with an increase in the minimum wage, and when we can expect that to actually kick in?
Yeah, timelines-wise would be measured more in weeks rather than months. So once that feedback is considered, compiled, and put through to caucus and on to Cabinet, that's a process of weeks. Any further legislative amendments have to go forward through Parliament. That's a longer timeline. 28-day notice period and drafting and other things would have to happen. So that process would take months.
I'm glad you raised the legislative part of it, because naturally with changes like this, is that where the process is heading? Is it going to be, or is it going to be an administrative change? Because with an administrative change, you don't need to go through the 28 days process. Is that the thinking?
It would depend, because some of the recommendations also touch on areas that are covered by legislation, in particular the recommendation on gratuities. So that's an area where we would need some legislative amendments, in addition to any orders that could be done to adjust the minimum wage levels itself.
Okay. Mr. Hurlston, I guess I want to get from you, the committee has had almost a year-long consultation. You've gone through this process. You've gotten the feedback. You've gotten the suggested numbers. Are you disappointed that we have to go a step further in this process by eliciting more views rather than just having action taken?
No, we're not disappointed at all. When we began this exercise, we said two things to the public. We said, first of all, we were not starting from scratch, because we had the foundation work of the 2015 report. And secondly, and more importantly, we emphasized that our work was to be advisory only. So once we have tendered our advice, that fulfills our mandate and our terms of reference. And now it is entirely in the hands of the ministry and the government to decide, A, whether they will accept the recommendations or not, and B, what sort of timeline will be associated with whatever they approve for implementation. So we're not disappointed. It's just part of the governmental bureaucracy and process.
Such a finessed response. It still leaves it open, though, for the public to understand that the government can say no increase at all. Correct?
It's a political decision to be made in relation to amending an order for minimum wage, but with the amount of pressure that's being applied by your agency and others, the government is really, I think, at an option that this has to be done. In relation to minimum wage, it's been quite some time now since the minimum wage has been looked at. And from a process perspective, I think, well, I know Mr. Hurlston and his team wanted to do sort of a report, post-report tabling press conference as we're having now to walk folks through the report. It's actually quite meaty, and most persons won't read all that's in there, but it is quite comprehensive in terms of the recommendations, how they got to the recommendations, and even the additional reports at the back from folks who weren't quite happy with the level of recommendations that were in there. So that's an entire comprehensive document that covers all that.
Okay, my final question. In the report, you had representations from CETA and the business, the Chamber of Commerce as well. CETA in particular, adverse to changing the way GRATs are, addressed in the minimum wage. Are you open to reversing your position on phasing out of the GRATs, given the protestations that we have for those changes?
No. The committee has completed its consideration, and it heard from the industries that submitted those minority reports. It invited those industries to make representations to the committee. We listened to them. We invited them to put their concerns in writing in the form of a minority report, which they did. We've included those minority reports in our final report. So we've been completely open and transparent in that regard, but our recommendations will not change.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reshma. We'll now call on April Cummings from Radio Cayman.
Afternoon, everyone. Some of these questions, Mr. Laidlaw, I think you did answer, but I just want to make sure that you did. I did try very hard to read the report. There are many pages, many appendixes. There's a lot of information in there, and there was a lot of why in there. So just to be clear, you may have touched on this already. So one of the questions one of our listeners asked is basically looking at the cost of living in Cayman as it is today, what they're living and seeing with right now, will this not make prices higher for them?
To be direct, in some cases, yes. Because some businesses depend a lot on low-cost labor, or what we say low-scale employment. Mm-hmm. And if the low-scale employment is increasing, they will have no choice but to pass on some of those costs. What we try to make sure in the committee is that it's not within the grocery shops and the food component of it. So we wanted to make sure that at least those wholesale and retail related businesses are not adversely affected. But as I explained earlier, in personal services, the beauty salons and things of that nature that is hands-on services are likely to increase their prices.
So would it be safe to say essential versus non-essential? Depending on your perspective, of course, but to a degree, things that you need to exist, utilities, food,
right.
Water versus I want to get my hair done.
Correct. The only thing I can add there is that the only point I want to add, it all depends on whether or not we can also pass it on. Mm-hmm. Because competition may dictate that they may have to absorb that cost.
And from a statistical perspective, do you have concerns about the employers who say, well, we just aren't going to be able to afford this, or we won't be able to expand in the way that we might have because of this? How do you address those kind of concerns?
From an economics perspective, we'd love that every business survive, every small business survive. But I think it's if it is that one of the major components of a business is the ability to pay employees, and to pay employees a fair wage, because the backbone of any business is hinged on their employees. And if it is that they're having difficulty paying, I think they may have to relook some aspect of their business model as to whether or not you're in the right line of business, or you can improve your efficiencies within the business to survive.
So a viability
Viability,
kind of
yes.
study for yourself. Mr. Hulsman, this one is a bit for you.
Sure.
How important do you think this work is to be doing, and what are some of the challenges that the group has faced trying to get to this point?
Well, I think the work is terribly important, and so much so that we have been asked questions in relation to cost of living. We've been asked questions in terms of a living wage as opposed to a minimum wage. We've been asked questions about the impact this is going to have on families, particularly in the area of childcare and education costs, etc. And we've had to say to some of those inquiries that we've been trying to stay in our lane, albeit a broad lane. We've been trying to stay in our lane in not trespassing too heavily on areas outside our terms of reference. So you'll see that the report follows largely the scope of the terms of reference, and we've tried not to go outside of what we consider our lane for purposes of making a recommendation. And you'll see in the report also that we've compared the status of Cayman's minimum wage with the minimum wages in several other territories in the region, so that we're not isolating Cayman at all, but placing Cayman in the context of the wider Caribbean.
So one area that I spotted that was a potential concern relates to seniors and seniors having live-in care in their homes. Their incomes aren't getting any larger as they get older. So it may be different for someone on the front end of the spectrum for whom, I have 2 kids and I need some help. Whereas a senior citizen or someone on a very fixed income may see some challenges ahead. And this could be anyone on the panel. Any thoughts based on what you researched and studied? Because just because I want to pay $12 an hour doesn't mean at 85 I can pay $12 an hour to have someone care for me. So just any thoughts on that specific
No,
area?
we take the point. And we've mentioned in our report that there are several areas that we would recommend for further careful study, because we didn't have the time to complete our research in some of those areas. And what we also know is that following simultaneously with our work is the work of several other government agencies, including the Needs Assessment Unit. And there may be cases to be made for persons who are going to have to need a little bit more assistance economically in order to be able to survive. And if that is the case, we've been assured by the ministry responsible for the NAU that will be taken into account. And persons who are now being reassessed for their current registration purposes may benefit from an increase in the allowance that is provided to them.
And then finally, the last question, this also was from a listener. Their concern was about how, as you pay more and more money goes into the labor force, if you will, their concern was about how much money may be leaving the island versus staying. Maybe not, I'm not sure that's in the parameters or not, but I figured from an economic perspective that would be an interesting area. Do you have any insight on that? I didn't get to that page if it was in there.
Right. Yes, we did consider in the estimation of the GDP growth, what proportion of the increase in the minimum wage will leave the country. So we only factored a portion of that, which is basically 80% of the minimum wage will be spent in Cayman. And we're assuming persons who are maybe from some external origin may well, send home 20% of that increase or so. But we really factor that into consideration, and the GDP will still expand with the additional spending. Not only that, we looked at also the social issues, whereas housing, persons with a little higher income may be able to afford somewhere better to live. So that money will be spent throughout the economy. Probably the landlord may be Caymanian, and the person renting may be non-Caymanian. So we basically passing the money through those persons into the economy and into maybe homes of Caymanians.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
April, thank you very much. Just a quick note to members of the public. If you'd like to email your feedback, you can do so to this address, minimumwage@gov.ky, and the deadline is April the 9th. All right, I'd like to call next Wendy from, okay, we're going to call Ralph from the Caymanian Times.
Good
Ralph?
afternoon, Donna. Thank you. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Hurlston and your team for such a comprehensive report. I think it's overdue. Now, what might take a longer time is the implementation. So my first question to you, sir. From what I'm hearing, we will be doing some more events to get feedback from the public. That's what the minister and the chief officer said. From the time you spent on the road having those meetings, in your mind, was the response from the public acceptable? In other words, do you think enough people came out to listen to this important issue from you and your team?
Yeah, yes. From the committee's point of view, we believe that we did as thorough a consultation as was necessary for the purposes of determining the results that we have recommended. But we are perfectly happy to go back on the road again with the recommendations in hand and listen a little bit more carefully and keenly, because two things. We note very much, in particular, the recommendation of the International Labour Organization, whose recommendation is that one must be cautious and careful in not recommending too high an increase all at one time. And the word that they used in their advice to us was to have a more gradual increase. So for those persons who are clamoring for $15 an hour, it would be nice if we could afford it, and if businesses could afford it, and if no one suffered any loss, that would be very nice. But we have to be a little bit more practical and realistic about that. Also, if we note what happened in the case of Bermuda, who has introduced the $16.40 an hour U.S. minimum wage, they took the decision politically that they wanted to move from a minimum wage model to a more livable wage model. So they have sort of taken and bite the bullet. We may get to that stage sooner rather than later as well, but we thought that we would start with a more gradual adjustment. And we knew that the $6 an hour when it was first introduced was low. We knew that. We erred on the side of caution when it was first introduced. Now we're taking another step, and we'll take another step in another 4 years, and we'll probably get closer to a livable wage by that time, I believe.
Thank you very much. My next question, Mr. Little. You mentioned that companies may have to change their business models to implement some of these changes, of the minimum wage changes. Do you think companies will reduce their reliance on work permit holders?
I'm sure, as generally what the literature said regarding that is, as minimum wage increase more, companies then require more skill. So it is likely that persons, as you get higher along the wage bracket, they are likely to put more skill requirements on those jobs. So it may be that the person who is skilled, whether it be Caymanian or non-Caymanians, it may well get rid of some of the on-skill or the lowest levels of skill going into those. So it's quite possible, based on the literature and the experience in other countries, that some of them may move away from the low-skill labor to higher skill.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is for the Chief Officer. Mr. Wesley, there have been complaints about employers not paying the right wages to some of the employees. They're cutting their weekly wages by a certain number of hours. Who monitors these changes, and if a new minimum wage will be put in place, will there be a regime to ensure that these issues don't occur in the future?
Most definitely, and the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee did hear from the Department of Labor and Pensions, who has the oversight for employer-employee relationships. They also heard from Department of Work, and that's on the work permit side of things. So in both of those, there are areas where individuals can be held accountable for satisfying their contractual agreements. Where we have a bit of difficulty is that household employers and small employers are not held by the same standard in relation to medium and larger employers in terms of their paperwork trails and other things like that. So those are some of the things that I said we need to then consider outside of the scope of just a minimum wage report and look at some other ways that we can give teeth to the Labor Act and also from the work permit side of things. But I'll use this opportunity with my Chief Officer for Border Control hat on. If employers are, in particular foreign labor, are holding work permits for persons that they don't have sufficient work for, then the onus is on them to advise authorities that they no longer require those resources, so the person isn't left to work illegally or commit other illegal acts within the country. And it would be something that our departments will be taking forward, both CBC and Work, in relation to that policing aspect as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Donna.
Okay, thank you very much, Ralph from the Caymanian Times. Before we move on to Wendy from the Cayman News Service, I do have one question from the general public. It reads, hospitality industry workers were not represented fairly as they were warned against speaking out by their employers. What precautions were done to mitigate against this major conflict of interest? Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, there were a number of facilities for folks to give their recommendations as they are now going ahead. The hospitality area has been one that did have significant discourse. There are some other matters that were aired in Parliament in relation to a shift from a gratuitous portion to resort fees and other fees that don't pay into gratuities. So we did hear quite a bit of a squeezing of the gratuities away from the employee and onto the employer from this resort fee. So I know that our colleagues over in the Ministry of Tourism is looking at the grants aspect and the resort fees aspect of this bit. But what I can say now is that we have another avenue for them to make their representations heard. But the recommendations in relation to phasing down GRAT and increasing the minimum wage going forward, I think would come to the benefit of the employees there for sure.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to Ms. Wendy from Cayman News Service for final questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Donna. Hi, everyone. I'm going to go straight in. I think a lot of people are going to say that this is still inadequate, especially given how terribly inadequate the $6 was in the inflation environment that we've had since. Given that the supermarkets have said that they could go as far as 12, given that the ILO has said it should be at least 10.50, and even with the plans at the moment, in 6 years, we still won't be at 10.50, and you can imagine what the inflation environment could be by that time. And the fact that you have said that we would be looking at perhaps a loss of 700 jobs, or thereabout, 70% of which are not Caymanian. Why is it that you have gone so low ball and not gone for the $10?
We don't consider that we've gone low. We've considered that we've gone very near to the upper limit that was recommended to us by the model that the Economic and Statistics Office just explained. We started out with the vulnerability line as the bottom, and we went nearly up to the maximum that was recommended of $9, I think it was. $9. Yeah, we've landed at $8.75. And
who recommended $9?
No, that was the result of the survey that was carried out by the Economic and Statistics Office. They surveyed the large business employers on the island, and they asked the question about increasing the minimum wage by $1, $2, or $3 an hour, and they said anything more than $3 an hour increase, they would have to pass on that increase to the consumer. So we know that inflation is the elephant in the room, and we have to be cautious that we don't feed that that inflation giant.
Are you not? That's one thing, but it seems to me that there's an awful lot of other evidence that suggests that they could manage it, and that businesses are always going to say we're passing on. Where and like what you said earlier about many just have terrible business models, and that's why they're passing the prices on, because they're just really bad at business. So where you've got all of these other people, especially the grocery stores, which is a very clear indication, if Foster's can afford to pay $12 an hour, then I'm sure that Security Centre can too. So you have that situation where it seems you've taken the evidence from just one place that says we can't afford any more than 4, and ignored all of the other, especially given the recommendations of the ILO, which is saying that you should be at least 1050 in a phased way. But if we can't even make it to 1050 in 6 years, how's that meeting? And you're talking about even $10 an hour would still be only $1,600 a month on an average 40-hour week.
Yeah.
So I think I think people are going to be asking, especially as we're now looking at, there's no sign of the minister. The minister has already said that he didn't like what your recommendations were in Parliament when he recently came out. It was going to be too difficult. That the whole situation, it seems, is by the time we get there, 8.75 is going to be just as bad as 6 was several years ago, if you get what I'm saying. That we're playing catch up. And that we're not doing we've not put forward something that could really help us catch up. I'm just saying what I think people,
And
how people will
I
view
think there are
this.
lots of people that will agree with you. And Cayman has a history of catching up. We have a history of waiting until things are really in dire straits before we take steps to remediate them. And this is just another good example of how we could have taken steps earlier and didn't. But remember, we had COVID in the middle of all this as well. So there are several extenuating factors that impacted our ability to keep this one current. But it is important for the public to understand that whilst we want to reward labor fairly, we also want to take into account the capacity of businesses to be able to afford that labor. And there's therefore a balancing act. And in this case, it was a tripartite arrangement of employer, employee, and independent persons working together to come up with a recommendation. Now, if the government believes that our recommendation is not generous enough and they want to increase it, by all means, that would be fine. And the advisory committee is nothing more than advisory.
And if I may add also, Wendy, and in terms of setting the $9, what we did is evaluated the data not from the minimum wage surveys, but from the national accounts. Every year we survey businesses for what they're doing. They will send us their financial statement, those will have, or they will estimate what their financial statement is. And the same ILO advised that the minimum wage should set such that there's not undue disruption within the business community. And when we look at the data, what they're earning on average per hour, for the preponderance of small businesses, we recognize they could not absorb more than $9 at this time. Now that this report is out, they have more leeway to say, well, in the future, maybe the minimum wage will be increased, so they will look back at their own business model.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, talking of, just going back briefly to the minister who's not here, and obviously his comments about that. Mr. Wesley, will you be advising the minister to recuse himself from the discussions regarding the minimum wage, given that he is an employer of low-paid workers and that this will directly impact him?
That would be a matter for the minister himself to do, but he is the Minister for Labour and has the responsibility here. What I can share, though, is that where those shrinkages would come in relation to people not being able to pay, a significant portion of that are small businesses and individual employers. I did ask Adolphus before we started what the average salary is for Caymanians as of his last survey, and it was somewhere around 40,000. So to do the math on that, it's about $20 an hour. So someone making $20 an hour, in my view, I'm no statistician, would not be able to afford to pay a domestic helper $12 an hour. That would be a non-starter. So we can have academic exercises, or we can have ones like we're having now in relation to putting out that number. And some people will not act until now that they see what the number is. We were asking sort of hypothetical questions to begin with, but now folks will go pen to paper and look at this number and say, what does this actually mean for me, my business, and my household, and what cuts would I have to make to absorb the estimated $51 million that this is going to come from the local economy. So there's some real exercises there, and your arguments coming in today are no different than the committee has been doing internally for since they've been meeting for those months. So
Yeah, I was just trying to work out, when there's so many different stats coming at you, why it is that we seem to have focused on one particular stat, which is businesses saying, no, we don't want to pay it, and rather than all of the other stuff that you had. That was all. I only have a final question, which is a little bit more on enforcement. Obviously, it's going to add to the... I think most people right now are paying more than minimum wage, so they're actually enforcing it wasn't as challenging as $6. But it is going to take it up to a bit further, and it's going to be, especially in the beginning, we're probably going to see more. Do you estimate that you're going to need a much bigger budget for enforcement at the Department of Labour?
That is one area. Also, from a work permit regime perspective, a lot of the persons affected here are working within homes, within smaller businesses. They tend not to be as organized. So from an enforcement perspective, we will be taking steps to ensure that persons who are not gainfully employed are not, who are not from Cayman are not here sort of getting into mischief that would be necessary for them to survive.
Okay, but do you see that this is actually going to add to the enforcement that you are?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so will you be seeking a bigger budget for 2025 now?
We do have some additional positions in the budget, but we'll see how the bond pans out in relation to there.
In other words, you're going to ask, but you might not get.
Well, we've already gotten some, is what I was trying to say, but will depend on where that goes. But again, the government's budget is a matter for what the public can afford to pay from a revenue perspective, so that too has limitations.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Wendy. Before we wrap up, I do have two final questions. One comes from CMR, the other is from the public. The one from the public addresses the Chamber of Commerce, who they say represents many of the micro and small businesses on island. What kind of feedback was received from the Chamber, if anybody's able to speak to that?
Well, we had the president of the chamber come in and do an oral presentation, followed by a written submission, and of course, a former president of the Chamber's Council served as a member of our advisory committee. So we had full consultation, and the Chamber also submitted a minority report, which is part of the committee's report. So we've had complete transparency and an open dialogue with them.
Okay. The other question, Mr. Lem, I think you already alluded to this, but the recommendations timeline, the question basically asks, it's from Mr. Howell actually, but I know that Mr. Les said something about it earlier. It says that the implementation of the minimum wage could take months. However, the committee gave certain timelines for this to be put in place. If these timelines are not followed, wouldn't this affect what the committee has actually suggested? And wouldn't this mean the recommendations would then become invalid? Are the recommendations time sensitive?
No, the way that we have designed our recommendations, we've linked future increases to the consumer price index. So we're trying to take it out of the realm of just politics, just for political decisions alone. And we're trying to implement a mechanism that will be triggered based on economic activity and the consumer price index. So I think the model that we're recommending is a more stable model going forward.
Okay. As we wrap up, any final words from anyone in the panel?
Just a reminder for individuals that the feedback can be given to minimumwage.gov.ky. You can also write through to the ministry in sort of old-fashioned handwriting, and the committee will be on Radio Cayman on Friday. Also trying to get to a wider audience and solicit feedback on the proposed numbers, in particular the number that is there, but also the proposal on gratuities and how that affects the increases over the next 5 years in that sector of our economy.
Okay. Well, as always, thank you to the panelists, the public, and the media for joining us today. You can watch this press briefing online at the Cayman Islands Government YouTube channel on demand at any time that you'd like. For now, I'm Donna Bush. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I'm going flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have our very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Discover your dream home with Cayman National's home loan. Get up to 95% financing, repayment up to 40 years, and just a 0.5% commitment fee. Your interest rate? Depending on your risk factors, it'll be fixed or variable. Plus, you get a pre-approved credit card. This is a limited time offer. Dial 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
You don't sound too good there, Bobo.
Yeah, you know how it is. With the kids back in school, every other week they come in out with something, and then I catch it.
Sound like it catch you. But for real, brother, flu season is here and COVID is still around. You gotta stock about things like medicine, vitamins, and minerals for you and the kids. You know what they say, prevention is better than cure.
At ValueMed, our pharmacists can help manage flu symptoms and provide guidance on vitamins and minerals to best support you and your family's overall health. Visit ValueMed Pharmacy on Walkers Road or Boddentown, or WhatsApp your questions and prescription refills to ValueMed on Walkers Road at 926-1662, or WhatsApp ValueMed in Boddentown at 916-5511. Live happy, live healthy with ValueMed Pharmacy.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
This is Ronnie Anglin. I work in the water sports industry. I'm concerned that our islands are at a high risk of coral bleaching and coral disease outbreaks. Rising sea levels, sea temperatures, and ocean acidification have caused catastrophic increases in the number and severity of coral bleaching events, disease, and death. Snorkeling and diving may one day not be an option. To learn more about climate risk to our islands, visit www.gov.ky/climate change policy.
Find your dream car with a Cayman National Vehicle Loan. Enjoy 100% financing, up to 8-year repayment, and a 7% fixed interest rate for the first 5 years. For eco-friendly cars, we'll waive your commitment fee. This only applies to new vehicles. Call 949-8300 or email lending@caymannational.com today.
Your dream home starts with a vision,
and often inspiration is at the heart of that vision. Brand Source Home Gallery's in-house designers are here to help bring your vision to life. Whether you're remodeling or building a new home, Brand Source Home Gallery is your one-stop solution. Explore their kitchen cabinets, sinks, faucets, bath fixtures, tubs, vanities, and more. Let Brand Source's designers help and inspire you with your next project. Call 623-5000 and schedule an appointment with a design expert at Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park, serving Cayman for 50 years.
When you have a sports or fitness-related injury, trust the expertise of the HSA Sports and Exercise Medicine Clinic to get you back in the game. Our internationally trained and certified physicians specialize in sports traumatology, sports medicine, pain management, and orthopedic surgery. For treatment of common injuries such as tendonitis, arthritis, tennis elbow, rotator cuff, or knee tears, schedule a consultation with the Sports and Exercise Medicine Clinic at Smith Road Medical Center by calling 949-8600 or visit hsa.ky for more information.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard the news? Digicel is back with exciting offers that are too good to resist. Activate one of our brand new prepaid or postpaid plans today and experience telecommunications like never before. With more data, dedicated entertainment options like Netflix, YouTube, Spotify, and endless social text data for all your favorite platforms. Digicel is here to make sure you stay connected and entertained. Whether you are on a prepaid or postpaid, you will also enjoy dedicated roaming data for the USA, Canada, and the Caribbean. It's all about value, and Digicel has got you covered.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I'm going flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
Take some advice from your Aunt Angie. If you want to go scuba diving on your vacation, don't bedazzle your wetsuit. And you think you look great, but what you don't realize is that you look like a shiny, scaly fish. And it won't take long for a shark to notice you. Next thing you know, you're busting out every karate move you got. But if you're smart, you'll have CG Medical Insurance and get airlifted out to the closest hospital.
Get coverage for emergency evacuations. CG Britke. Good like that. All benefits are subject to policy provisions, including eligibility at the time of service.
It's Open Line on Talk Today. Call 1-800-534-8255. 949-8037. 949-6990. Or 925-3261. Call now.
Hey, welcome back to Talk Today, and thank you very much for joining us for the live press briefing. As you heard the announcement relative to the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee, it is some open line for the next 15 minutes or so, and we will take your calls. 949-8037 is not working. 949-6990. Of course, the WhatsApp call at 925-3261. Let's go straight to our phones. Hey, welcome. Thank you for calling.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling.
And to you, sir. How are you today?
Man, I'm telling you, listening to that thing about the minimum wage, boy, you know something.
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to me like it's a good time to be skilled, a skillful person, like being able to, for example, like a barber or not like you can do your own thing. You can lower your prices or running your little business or something like that, because the prices going up. It seemed like that's what I heard predicted.
So as you listen to it, I mean, and how you are, what do you feel about it? I mean, what's your view? You think it's going to be a good thing? It's going to increase the cost of living and cost of doing business? What do you think?
According to what I interpreted, I've been watching a lot of different types of businesses for quite some time, and apparently, in my opinion, I think the price is the cost is gonna be an increase. Sorry to say that, but I think it's gonna be an increase. The cost of living, and in certain areas, as they were saying, it could be predicted that there'd be a lot of job losses. So I can remember them days when I used to tell the employer, well, you don't have to pay me all that, sir. You can pay me less. So to keep your job. So if you see what I'm saying, sometimes you can talk to the employer, and that's what I used to do years ago. Tell him, sir, you don't have to pay me that much. You can pay me less if you want. That it sounds foolish, but at least you're keeping your job. I mean, it seemed like people got how to go around corners, and when it concerned this proposed increase in the minimum wage, the $8.75 that they're talking about, because I don't know, it was very well put together. And it works well for the businesses, because the businesses got to survive, and that's what I'm saying. No, if someone is saying, well, it does have to be $6, would you like to be paid $7.50? I mean, that's in the past. No, I mean, it seemed like it made sense to me, because now the price is predicted to be going up, because that's just the way that things appear to me.
Well, I'm listening to you, and I'm reading something that two people, I should be specific, reference after listening to the press briefing, so maybe I'll refer to that in a second, concerning not only the increased cost to the businesses, the potential impact on the ability to the business to continue in business, but also who will benefit from it and what will it do to the economy and the like. So maybe as we process it, maybe we'll see where it's going, Anything else you want to share with us?
Well, I got something else to say too. Maybe it's a good time to be a musician too.
Yeah. It's, to my mind, always a good time to be alive.
I'm telling you. I don't know. It sounds kind of chilling to me.
Yeah. It's how I see it, right, is about opportunity, and it's about being thankful, and it's about trying to figure out, well, where are we in this time in human history? What are we doing? What do we think, we need to be doing?
You're right.
So, and not rushing any other comments and thoughts, because it's going to be a discussion that has been had for a while, and now that it's, where it's at, there are going to be a lot more questions and a lot more, sort of commitments on the part of people.
All
right.
Okay.
Thanks always for listening and being informed and sharing it from your perspective.
All right, then.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. Well, open line at 949-8037. 949-6990. You can WhatsApp call at 925-3261. And as a gentleman was sharing, as he listened to the press briefing, we heard the comments that, this was sort of a factual assessment, the political implications and the policies and legislative changes and stuff. We leave that to the parliamentarians. But to what extent are we, the wider populace, now taking this on board and processing it? With that, we'll pause quickly, and then when we return, we invite you to be tuned in and call. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
At Doctors Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctors Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
You know, as a little girl, I dreamt of traveling to faraway places and foreign lands. I tell you what though, no more dreaming. I'm going flying with Cayman Airways. How blessed are we in the Cayman Islands to have a very own national airline? Girl, you can fly to so many international destinations without the hassle of connecting flights. On top of Jamaica, Cuba, and Honduras, you got non-stop flights from Cayman to New York, Miami, Tampa, and even Denver, Los Angeles, Panama, and child, they now have Barbados. Going to be a little cafe con leche and Hollywood Squares for this old gal.
Make your travel dreams come true with Cayman Airways, offering non-stop flights for non-stop adventures in Panama, LA, and many more places in between. For details and to book, call 949-2311, contact a travel agent, or visit CaymanAirways.com.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer. From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. For all occasions and celebrations, let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Government school registration for the 2024-2025 academic year opens online on March 1st. Enrollment is based on a first-come, first-served basis with established priority categories. So please, register your child early to maximize your chances of getting them into a school within your catchment area. To learn more or register your child, please visit schools.edu.ky by June 30th. This message is brought to you by the Department of Education Services.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. What is on your mind, Cayman?
Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and really appreciate the opportunity for Radio Cayman to, in partnership, with the CIG TV and the like, to always have the public informed. So I trust that you were able to listen in as you were continuing to follow along for the minimum wage. Here is a sentiment. I'll read it in verbatim. Says raise the minimum wage as an idea. Increase the minimum, and if the foreign workers set a minimum period to work in Cayman and simultaneously allow businesses not to have to contribute to the pension. All right, let's take this call. Hey, welcome. Thank you for calling.
Hey, good afternoon, Dwayne.
And to you, KB. How are you today, man?
Okay, man. You?
Man, very, very thankful. I'm very grateful, indeed.
All right, Dwayne. Glad to hear that, man.
You too, man.
Yeah, because we're the same age, and so we got to take this thing as long as we can.
Hey, listen to me, Mark. I always says, the one thing about life, nobody gets out of life, so you better enjoy every moment. You gotta make the attempt to both be grateful and gracious, man.
Yeah, thankful to be alive, so let's strive.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Well,
boy.
concerning the minimum wage, Dwayne,
Uh-huh.
I think it's kind of unfair to Caymanians, you know.
Uh-huh.
You know why?
Tell me.
I asked a Filipino security guard how much it is for a 4-bedroom cement house and 2-bathroom upstairs in the Philippines,
Uh-huh.
and he told me it's $40,000 US. And you know how much that would cost us in Cayman Islands, right?
Yeah, but then no, I hear your point, but the question then, what would it take if you were an employee in the Philippines working? What would it take for you to get that equivalent, to buy and build a house like that? So it's 40,000 US, which to us in an exchange rate, but then they're working there. How would it?
No. What I'm saying is, Caymanians should be making more than these people are making, Dwayne.
No, I hear you.
It's plain as daylight.
Yeah. But do you think then that the minimum wage, let's just use easy numbers, right? Let's say it was $10, it's increased to $8, $10, whatever the sum is, right? Do you think that the employer now is going to look at that and find it increasingly more attractive to pay that to the work permit holder?
Well, Dwayne, for example, just say construction,
Uh-huh.
right? Laborers start off with $10 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Trade workers, they make $12 an hour.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair. But when it comes to Caymanians now, in order for us to survive in our own country, I tell you the God's truth, Dwayne, a Caymanian working at a construction site should not make anything less than $15 to $17 an hour.
Why not 20? I mean, how did you arrive at that sum?
Well, 20 is the perfect number for that.
Okay.
You know why? Because the sun is hot as hot can be.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't have to tell you that. You can feel that yourself.
If I might ask, though, we think about minimum wage in terms of the hourly paid employee. But what about people who work in other industries that may be given a salary, not based on whether they're in the so-called, financial services and the other industries? Should there be some sort of minimums for them as well?
Well, Dwayne, how I see it,
Mm-hmm.
people who come from countries, and most of them do come from countries that one Cayman dollar is so much in their country.
Okay.
And we as Caymanians don't have plans on going to those people's countries and live.
Okay.
But that is their plan, to go back home and to live.
So then,
It's only fair to Caymanians for Caymanians to be making more money than these people doing.
no, I hear you. So then, if we have a minimum wage and we increase it, in your estimation, who benefits most from that? The work permit holder or the Caymanian?
Well, Dwayne, right now, what the wages are right now in Cayman Islands,
Mm-hmm.
you don't hear too much work permit holders complaining, right?
Not seemingly, okay.
Okay, but you hear plenty of Caymanians complaining, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but that should say it all right there. Thank you very much, Dwayne.
You're most welcome, man. Thanks for listening and for sharing. I know we had the opportunity as we sat and listened to the press briefing and had a few extra seconds to field some calls. Maybe looking at a few of the messages that have come in, questions might be, to what extent this will make it attractive to hire some people over others. Will it create a system that might help to dispel what is allegedly a practice of people being paid, a sum that is, in some people's minds, less than what they deserve. All right. Tomorrow, with all of our days in programming, we invite you to be a part of what Radio Cayman has to offer. Thanks again for allowing us to, as Mr. Art says, come into your homes, in your offices, in your cars, and we're grateful that you listen to the program we have from our talk shows. It's Money Sense tomorrow, Mr. Carl, and that's another informative program that speaks to, finance and the like. So be a part of that. Come back for talk today. We're going to be talking about early childhood education as part of our discussion. Friday is the 8th, honoring Women Month. I've made some plans, but I probably won't get to them. But that's a different story, and that's on me. But together, we will make it better. Have a wonderful and blessed afternoon.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Cayman Airways. Call them on 949-2311 to book your nonstop flights to Los Angeles and Panama. And now, Barbados. And Digicel, Cayman's bigger, better network. And Doctors Hospital. Peace of mind is important when life happens. Doctors Hospital, always there for you. Call 949-6066.